Matt Moscona.
I'm very important.
After further review.
Say it one more time.
After further review with Matt Moscona.
And here we go.
Live from the Raising Cane studio.
Let's ride!
Off and running, now number 2, after further review here on a Friday, presented by Don Juan Cigar Bar. Musso in for Moscona. Scone back on Monday. Happy New Year to all. Jordan Kitchens, Paul O'Neill, they're along for the ride as well. We're happy to have you along for the ride as the transfer portal is officially open, and that is where we'll begin our number 2 and spend a bulk of our time in our number 2. So we still got to get to portal needs, just kind of go position by position, where LSU needs the most. We'll do that a little bit later on. Multiple players on the offensive side already setting up visits to LSU. We'll talk about those as well. And I do have some thoughts on the college football playoff quarterfinals, how those played out, and, of course, obviously, what they resulted in, which was, now the set of the semifinals, Ole Miss, Miami, and Indiana and Oregon. I think both those are going to be fantastic games. So we'll get to that a little bit later on as well. But as promised, portal is where we start. When you look at LSU's portal needs, the majority of them are on the offensive side of the ball, of their most glaring. Quarterback is certainly one of them. Yes, as of this moment, LSU still has Michael Van Buren on their roster for 2026 as a quarterback. That is it, though, in terms of scholarship players. One, Michael Van Buren, and that ultimately could end up changing. He has said that he's had conversations with Lane Kiffin and the staff, wants to be at LSU, expressed plenty of interest in staying, said, it's good right now. That was his quote, it's good right now. We'll see if that changes. Because the conversation we had here last with is, even though that's his feeling and that's the case, LSU is still going to and still needed to get in the portal and get a day one starting quarterback for 2026. You could look down the list, see all the guys that are in the portal, take your pick of who you want. And most, if not all of them, were on LSU's board because that's where you were when it came to that position and where you still are. The news today is that Brendan Sorsby, who just entered the transfer portal after a couple of seasons at Cincinnati, has set 2 visits, one of them to Baton Rouge. So on Friday, today, Brendan Sorsby spent Friday in Lubbock visiting Texas Tech. He will then leave the visit at Texas Tech and come straight to Baton Rouge and be here over the weekend for a visit to LSU. This is great news for one, and it would just be a massive get for LSU. And I will tell you right out the gate, this is my pick. This is the quarterback that I covet in the transfer portal more than any. So I am extremely excited about the possibility of Brendan Sorsby ending up at LSU, and that's starting with a visit this weekend. Some background on Brendan Sorsby. He has 1 year of eligibility remaining. So this would be, this is not a, hey, come here, maybe multiple years. No. He has 1 year left. This is him showing up, balling out potentially, and hopefully leading you to big things and a deep playoff run. He started his career at Indiana, spent 2 seasons there. When the coaching change happened and Curt Cignetti came in, he entered the transfer portal and ended up at Cincinnati, where he has started the last 2 seasons. The jump he made, noticeable in one area in particular, and that was touchdown passes. He went from 18 touchdown passes his first year at Cincinnati to 27 this year. Everything else was pretty comparable. You might say, what's the reason for the touchdown pass increase? Well, there's a couple. Number one, just another year older, another year developed. Number two, he didn't get sacked 17 times. They had a great offensive line in front of him that kept him upright, and he was able to sit back there and pick defenses apart. In one area in particular that excites me, and I'll tell you about that momentarily. But this is a guy who completed over 60% of his passes, threw for 2,800 yards, 27 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a great ratio. He had a quarterback rating of over 150. He was awesome in the Big 12. Where I look at this and go, okay, I love it, aside from all of that, is his production in the middle of the field. A place where LSU struggled mightily this past season for a lot of different reasons. But on throws, it's just 2025. Throws beyond the line of scrimmage between the numbers. Sorsby completed 71% for just shy of 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. When you just look at him on throws in the numbers, on passes 20 yards or more, he was 10 of 19 for over 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He shines there. Things you might want to see him improve on a little bit if he does end up at LSU. Completion percentage as a whole, particularly to the boundaries. But that will come in Lane Kiffin's offense. And that's where I look at this and I go, okay, he's a perfect fit. Because he's already shown plenty of accuracy. And Lane Kiffin's offense, all it does is have numerous high percentage throws in it. Numerous. To where that it's very quarterback friendly. And you could argue the weapons he'll have at LSU will be better than he would at Cincinnati. Will he be playing tougher defenses in the SEC if he chooses LSU? Absolutely. But this is a guy with plenty of talent and plenty of skill. The other aspect of this that we have not discussed yet is the dual threat aspect. And he is true dual threat guy. Sorsby, 101 carries this year, I should say, 580 yards, 9 touchdowns. And it's not just scrambles. He can do it both, design runs and scrambles. He picked up 39 first downs with his legs alone for Cincinnati. He is production immediately. And man, LSU, where look, you're going to go out there and you're going to add pieces in the portal on the offensive line. Like, I understand that. But it's still going to take time for guys to gel. And in today's college football, you always feel much better when you have a quarterback who can escape, who can create with his legs, extend the play. It's not just about running down the field, scrambling, extending plays, keeping your eyes downfield, finding the open target, something Brendan Sorsby did fantastic. And it's crazy because you look at this and you match it to what Trinidad Chambliss did at Ole Miss this year, and you see just a wild, almost stat for stat era, especially in the run game. The completion percentage and the passing yards were a little higher for Chambliss, but not much. And everything else was pretty much equal. He just looks like the perfect fit. Now, you are going up against top talent, top portal schools. In Texas Tech, another one to keep an eye on is Miami. It is not going to come cheap. But that is something that LSU is very aware of. LSU is prepared to make a very large NIL offer to a quarterback, as you might expect. If you're looking for some type of ballpark, the on-3 NIL valuation for Sorsby is a little bit over $2 million. I would tell you that's probably on the low side for a quarterback, and especially one of the top quarterbacks in the portal, which Sorsby is, depending on which service you look at. He is either the top or number 2 quarterback in the transfer portal right now. So, I mean, you look at a guy like Carson Beck, the deal he got from a Miami a year ago. I mean, y'all, Garrett Nussmeier was making $3 million at LSU. It's going to take more than a little bit over 2 to get Brendan Sorsby. And we'll have to see how willing LSU is to compete with oil money from Texas Tech, with everything that Miami potentially has to offer as well. LSU's got the money to make an offer at a quarterback and make a very lucrative one and one that they feel is more than competitive, and they will do that. But for them to already be bringing Brendan Sorsby in on a visit right now tells you that, yeah, they're pretty high on him. He's the first quarterback that's going to do so. They're pretty high on him. So if they want to be competitive, they will be. But ultimately, we'll have to see how it tracks out for Sorsby. The other interesting thing to look at with Texas Tech, his girlfriend is transferring there. That's not the be-all, end-all. Like, we understand that. But that does play a little bit of a role in this as well, as we also all understand. So keep that in mind as well. Maybe LSU's punching up a little bit, Tech's getting the first visit, then LSU. But this is huge regardless. And I would be frigging just over the moon excited if Brendan Sorsby ends up the LSU quarterback. We'll see how it goes, but he's coming for a visit. And the other thing it does is it shows you where they're swinging. They're going at the top of the portal. Positions in need, they are going right at the top of the portal, which I don't think is a surprise, but it drives home what Lane Kiffin said in his introductory press conference, though, doesn't it? Well, it's not surprising it drives this home that he feels the type of player that they'll be able to get at LSU is just greater than what they were able to get at LSU. The swings they'll be able to take at LSU are greater than what they were able to do at Ole Miss. That's from the guy who just coached there telling you. And I think them going right after Brendan Sorsby further illustrates that point. We'll keep you updated. Brendan Sorsby, top transfer quarterback in the portal, will be visiting LSU over the weekend. And, man, this would be one hell of a grab for LSU. This would fill your starter need. 31 starts at the quarterback position so far in 4 seasons in college. He's the first. He won't be the last. They're going to add multiple quarterbacks as well because, as we just said, he is a one-year guy. But, man, that'd be huge. And he'd be a guy that many would want to come play for as well from the skill position realm. LSU, Brendan Sorsby visiting over the weekend. All right, we're going to grab a break, and we'll come back, continue with the portal. Now that we have the key returners out of the way, we've talked about somebody coming in on a visit. Let's talk about LSU's overall portal needs. That's next here on AFR.
AFR.
Christmas is in the rearview mirror, and maybe you didn't get what you want, so how about you gift it to yourself? Go by Clegg's Nursery, any of the 4 locations, and they got tons of options. Yeah, they still got a great selection of poinsettias, a lot of beautiful plants that love this cooler weather. And remember, this is still the perfect time to go plant that fruit tree, that citrus tree that love this cold weather. So get by Clegg's Nursery, an amazing selection at any of the 4 locations. You know where they are. Siegen near Airline, LA 16 in Denham, Mid-City on Donmore, and the Garden Center on Greenwell Springs. Tell you every day to buy local, shop local. And yes, they still have an amazing selection of outdoor decor, the tuned wind chimes we tell you about all the time, the bird feeders, the hummingbird feeders, all of the different doormats and garden decor. They've got it at any of the 4 Clegg's Nursery locations. So do what I've told you to do for, a decade now. Buy local, shop local, and be sure to tell them Matt sent you in to Clegg's Nursery.
After further review with Matt Moscona, presented by Don Juan Cigar Bar.
It is my pleasure this week to welcome our new partner on to After Further Review, Our Lady of the Lake. Of course, great partnership as well as the official championship health partner of LSU. When you think who takes care of the LSU athletes, well, it's Our Lady of the Lake and the physicians there. Game-changing care, keeps athletes at their best, builds stronger, healthier Louisiana for all of us at every level. I've told you about my experience throughout my life living in Baton Rouge at Our Lady of the Lake, from volunteering at the Ronald McDonald Playroom to helping raise funds through so many different fundraising efforts for the standalone Children's Hospital to taking my son to see specialists there at Our Lady of the Lake Children's Hospital, to my own personal health. My GP is Dr. Kurt Chastain with Our Lady of the Lake Men's Health. It's good enough for the LSU athletes. It's good enough for me and you, of course. It's Our Lady of the Lake. You can learn more at ololrmc.com/LSU.
I have another receiver that is lining up a visit to LSU. Tell you about him a little bit later before we get out of the hour. The second hour, we'll probably do that to close hour number 2 out of NC State. His name is Terrell Anderson. So we'll talk about that a little bit here as we look forward to closing hour number 2. But what I wanted to do right here is really look at LSU's portal needs top to bottom. Biggest, where maybe you just need some depth. In fact, this is how I broke it up. Top positions of need, positions with depth, but you need another starter, positions to add competition, and positions that need depth. So we'll kind of just take them, those categories one by one. We'll start with top position of need. And I mean, y'all, these are all on the offense. Quarterback and offensive line, chief among them. We kind of talked about quarterback a little bit there in the last segment. We were talking about Brendan Sorsby's visit coming up to LSU. You have Michael Van Buren, and that's it. He is your one scholarship quarterback, and he might end up moving on depending on what LSU does here. LSU is going after multiple quarterbacks in the transfer portal. They need a starter, and then they need somebody else with experience. I will experience to be a backup or maybe come, hey, sit, develop, multiple years of eligibility left. Last week, we threw out Bryce Baker potentially as an option for that. He just entered the portal, and we talked about it then. A guy who redshirted at North Carolina, has all 4 years left, was an LSU, a guy LSU tried to flip late in the process in the class of 2025. Ultimately didn't get that done. But someone like that. Not necessarily him specifically, but someone like that. So, bona fide starter. You'd love to have experienced backup in there as well, which a guy like Michael Van Buren, if he chooses to stay, could fill that role for you. If not, you'll need to go get that out in the portal as well. And then somebody who, with multiple years of eligibility remaining, who could sit, learn, develop in the system potentially. That's what you're looking for at quarterback, and you desperately, desperately need it. We will see kind of how that goes along. And again, Brendan Sorsby, Texas Tech's hopefully not Texas Tech's quarterback. Cincinnati's former quarterback who's visiting Texas Tech today will be at LSU over the weekend. He could be the first step in going a long way in there. And then, of course, I mean, you have plenty of others as well that you could see LSU go target, but quarterback is right there. And I'll remind you again, Lane Kiffin with an incumbent starter in Austin Simmons heading into this season at Ole Miss took 3 quarterbacks out of the transfer portal. So LSU's taking multiple. 2 at least. I wouldn't shut the door potentially on 3, depending on what happens with your current roster. Then there's offensive line. You know the story. There are 6 offensive linemen already in the portal from LSU. Karius Kern, Tyree Adams, Cohen Eccles, Ori Williams, Paul Mubanga, and DJ Chester. They have already moved on. Some of them have already set up visits. When we were talking with Shea Dixon earlier this week, kind of previewing the transfer portal, he mentioned Tyree Adams is probably the strongest candidate out of those 6 to potentially return to LSU. Wait and see what happens with Braylon Moore. His decision, whether it is NFL draft or return to LSU, that is one to really keep an eye on. Nothing official has come there in terms of Braylon Moore. The deadline to declare for the draft is middle of this month. So we'll know that answer sooner rather than later. That would certainly be a huge boost. But one thing's for certain, you need guards and tackles if you're LSU. You have some bodies there in the offensive line, but it is just not experienced body. Braylon Moore, Weston Davis right now would be your most experienced returners. Outside of that, you have Bo Bordelon, Brett Bordelon, Solomon Thomas, Ethan Callaway, Kyrie Lee, Tyler Miller, and you bring in Bryson Martinez and Ryan Moret. That's where you are. And in that, you see Moore as a center, Davis as a tackle. You need another tackle, and you need guards. If you can get somebody else from this O-line class that entered the portal from you back, awesome. There's a lot of talent there. But I want LSU, for me, to go out and get a starting tackle and 2 starting guards. And maybe some more depth pieces as well. Because right now, with what we know, you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You need a few more. If you go get 5, that gives you 15. I could even We'll see you going a little bit higher than that potentially in your rotation. But quarterback, O-line, first and foremost, chief amongst your needs in the transfer portal. Then there's running back. You got a huge boost with Harlem Berry returning. We will see what happens with Caden Durham, who obviously could return, could enter the transfer portal. He's been a candidate to potentially maybe follow Frank Wilson to Ole Miss, potentially, maybe. As of now, he has not announced his intentions to enter the transfer portal and is not in the transfer portal. If you get Caden Durham back, that is huge. And you have your 1-2 punch with Harlem Berry and Caden Durham, and then your needs in the transfer portal at running back change drastically. Like what you're looking for, changes drastically. If Caden Durham ends up moving on from LSU, you need somebody who can go in there and compete and you feel comfortable putting in the game, who you know can be a bell cow for you. You're looking for the other half of your 1-2 punch. With JT Lindsey, he's been away from the team with legal trouble, obviously, since fall camp. We will see what's next in his process and his time at LSU. But right now, you cannot count that guy as a member of your team. So you're looking at Berry and Durham. You need multiple running backs. You need depth pieces right now. And then again, depending on what happens with Caden Durham, it could change what you're looking for. But I think you need at least 2 in that room as well. And then there's wide receiver in terms of just what? Kyle Parker into the transfer portal. That stinks. I don't like losing Kyle Parker. That's a tough one to swallow. We'll see if LSU can, if that's a path they want to go down, and see if they can, have him to have a change of heart and come back. We'll see. I'm not even sure if that's really what LSU wants. But he leaves. That takes away 80%, roughly around 80% of your production from wide receivers a year ago. What you have returning right now, because Destin Hill also entered the portal. We'll see what Nick Anderson wants to do. Sounds like he might be leaning a little bit towards coming back again. So you would have Nick Anderson, Phillip Wright, Teron Francis, and then you brought in Jabari Mack, Corey Barber, and Brandon Allen. That's it. Yo, that's 6 receivers. That's not enough. And you have, while there's a lot of talent there, you don't have the experience. And you're going to need a lot of experience coming in to be starters. Look for another big portal class because you have to have it. Probably 3. I'd say maybe 3, conservatively 3 receivers coming in this class. And you already have visits being lined up with 2 who we're going to tell you about here a little bit later on in the show. But those are the 4 that I looked at and I said, okay, top positions of need. Now, if I go to positions that you have depth, but I think you need another starter at, they're both on the defensive line. It's your interior defensive line, and it is your edge rusher spot. You have to find a starter to play next to Dominic McKinley. LSU has a lot of talent. Walter Buddy Mathis played a good bit of football for LSU this season and played very well. He played 139 snaps for LSU and acquitted himself nicely. But I'm not willing to turn 139 snaps over to, hey, you're going to go start next to Dominic McKinley. Dom McKinley with his 516 total snaps. The next closest on the interior is Shone Washington, and it's less than 200. And that has been in multiple years of football. Yes, on paper, you have a lot of guys. You need another starter. I look at a guy like Buddy Mathis. I look at a guy, potentially like Zion Williams coming back. They're really high on Brandon Brown as guys who can certainly be rotational pieces, much like Ahmad Bro and Don McKinley were this year in a sense for LSU. Like they could be that, but you have got to go get another starter on the interior defensive line, in my opinion. I understand you're bringing in Richard Anderson, Lamar Brown, Deuce Gerald's, all those guys. You brought in the best defensive line class ever. I understand. But that is all very young, inexperienced talent. They can factor in with Williams and Washington and Mathis as rotational pieces for LSU, but I need another starter at that position. Same goes for edge rusher. The same goes for edge rusher. They can be high. You're going to get Gabe Rutherford back, and that's awesome. And Gabe was great for you when he was in there. He had really, really, really taken the next step early in his second season. And he'll come back, and that'll be awesome. But I need somebody all opposite him. You know, there is no more Jamari Butler. There is no more Patrick Payton. Jack Pyburn is gone. Yes, you could be as high as you want on Kalaj Cobbins and Damian Shanklin and C.J. Jackson and Dylan Carpenter and all those guys, and that's great. But I need a bona fide threat off the edge that is proven for this LSU defense, while the rest of those guys, Shanklin, Cobbins, Jackson, they continue to develop and can rotate in and really get their feet wet this season. That is something that you absolutely have to have, in my opinion, if you're LSU in the transfer portal. This one, where I look at and go positions to add competition, I have one, and it's linebacker. LSU is very happy, and they're very high on everything they have at linebacker. Devon Keys has played a ton of football for LSU. Like, a ton of football in 2 seasons for LSU. I'll tell you right now, to be exact, 817 snaps. He started 9 games. But, man, there are still times where you look at that and you go, okay, it's great. But where's your full confidence level there? You need somebody to play next to Whit Weeks. I think Keys gets the first crack at it because he does have high upside, but there's improvement that does need to take place. Vanderbilt picked on him. Alabama picked on him. So that's why I look at this and I go, okay, go get me someone who can bring competition to that room. Somebody who can push Devon Keys. Somebody who could push Tylen Singleton. You know, they love what they have in Charles Ross, Jaden Breaker, Keelan Moses, that great linebacker class they brought in 2025. They love those guys. Charles Ross has already announced he's coming back. Blake Baker couldn't be higher on him, and I love that. But he played mainly on special teams. So I need depth and someone who's going to bring competition and could come in and is good enough to not only push these guys, but maybe beat some of them out. Because outside of West Weeks and Whit Weeks, you struggled at times at linebacker this year. So while you have a lot of young talent and they're very high on that, I need someone who's going to come in there and, force the issue a little bit with that room. That's what I'm looking for. And I say it that way because I also am high on all of those players that we just named. Okay, 3 more positions. And these are just positions where I think you need to add depth. They are cornerback, safety, and tight end. We'll start with corner. I mean, look, you're getting DJ Pickett, PJ Woodland, Aiden Andy, Jakeem Jackson. I mean, all of those guys have announced they're coming back. You're bringing in Haven Finney and Dez Ellis. Finney's a reclassification. He's young, so there's that. But, I mean, still, y'all, that's 6. You need more bodies there at cornerback. I think you feel great with your starters in Pickett and Woodland. I think you feel really good in your depth. And Jakeem Jackson, he played, potentially being your third guy. He played very well late in the season when he was asked to come in and play at a great PBU against Western Kentucky. Had some flashy plays in the bowl game as well. So I think you feel good there. And obviously you like Finney, who could get some early playing time, but again, just very young with the reclassification there. So you need bodies, and you need somebody who can come in and be able to go in the drop. The drop of a hat, one turned ankle away. Same goes for safety. Obviously, you get Deshaun Spears back. That's huge. We'll see what happens with DeMarcus Cooley's decision when that's made public. Joel Rogers entered the portal. So you're looking at right now Spears, Cooley, Bradford, Jace Thomas, and CJ Jim Coyley. And you bring in Hall and Isaiah Washington. That's a lot of bodies. And Jordan Gilbert as well. That's a lot of bodies. But I wouldn't mind another depth piece there potentially as the 4th rotational player. Right? Like, okay, you have Cooley, Spears as your starters. Okay, maybe Gilbert, and give me another guy there. And then, you have the rotational pieces as well. But I want a little bit more experience in that room behind your top 3 at safety. And that's really the same goes for tight end as well. I mean, look, we're all expecting Trey Green to be back. That has not been officially announced or anything of that nature, so we'll wait and see. He's a star at that position. Obviously, like, we know, like, he is unquestioned a complete game wrecker and game changer. Donovan Green entered the portal, so that leaves you with J.D. LaFleur, and then you bring in J.C. Anderson. Both those guys have great size. They can help. I would not hate having a fourth, much like you did this past season with Green, LaFleur, and Bauer Sharp. I think that would be great. So I would very much look for, and maybe another kind of like pass catcher type to complement Des Green, much like Bauer Sharp was able to do in 2025. So that's kind of the way I break it down. I mean, for me, I want LSU to go out and add somebody at every single position. And I think they need to, just from turnover purposes of this roster. And I think, especially not signing a quarterback, not signing a running back, not signing a linebacker in this cycle, I think those positions kind of really, call for it as well. So we'll see. That's where I stand on LSU's needs in the transfer portal. I'm on record as saying it. We'll see how it plays out. My guess is you're looking probably 25 to 30 additions in the transfer portal with Lane Kiffin at the helm right now in year one to fully overhaul this thing and have them competing for a playoff spot, which is where everybody wants them to be year one. And that is the expectation. It's fair expectation. Look at Indiana. Indiana right now looks like they are on a collision course with the national championship and not just playing in it, winning it. And that has been a 2-year turnaround. And they were in the playoff year one under Signetti. It can be done, and that's what people are going to expect from Lane Kiffin here in Baton Rouge in 2026. That's the path I think they should follow to get there. All right, we're going to grab a break. Speaking of the playoff, I'll give you a brief thought on the semifinal games and the quarterfinal games that led to them when we return, and then we are right back to transfer portal conversation. It's a Friday edition of AFR presented by Don Juan Cigar Bar. Musso in for Moscona. Stay here. More next.
AFR.
Brought to you by Glow Resources. If you are a business owner, if you're an HR manager, a VP, an ops manager, if you're the person in charge of hiring at your job, at your place of business, and you're having trouble finding the right people, you need Glow Resources. And I want to remind you, Glow Resources, they're exceptional when it comes to skilled blue-collar workers and also white-collar divisions. Remember, Glow Resources has a full professional placement division. So we're talking about office administrators, executive-level assistants, assistant controllers, plant managers, scheduling assistants, basically any type of office job. Accounting, HR, marketing, managerial, supervisor roles. If you're having trouble finding those people and sometimes hard to fill roles, Glow Resources specialize. They recruit nationwide. For example, they had a Baton Rouge company that was looking for an engineer. They found the employee in Florida to work the job in California. It's Glow Resources. Check them out online today. glowresources.com.
After further review with Matt Moscona, presented by Don Juan Cigar Bar.
AFR is brought to you by First South Farm Credit. You know where to start. Your first call, your first visit, your first option when it comes to buying land in Louisiana is First South Farm Credit. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be land in Louisiana because First South Farm Credit can help you buy land in any of the contiguous 48. And they've got more than 40 branches in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. So if you're right here in the Southeast, there's First South Farm Credit locations all near you. But remember, like, for example, let's say a lot of our audience in New Orleans, of course. You're living in New Orleans, maybe you're starting to build a family, grow a family. You want to move to the North Shore like a lot of people do. You want to buy the 100 acres in Tangipahoa. You can. And First South Farm Credit can help because they have an office in Amite. So you can walk in there. You can do business with someone who talks like you, lives where you live, and help you buy land wherever you want to buy land in the contiguous 48. It's First South Farm Credit. If you're thinking of buying land, your first call, your first option should be First South Farm Credit. FirstSouthLand.com.
All right, we're going to get back to the transfer portal here momentarily as there's another wide receiver that is lining up a visit to LSU already. We'll tell you a little bit about him to close out the hour. While I have a few minutes here, real quickly, just wanted to offer some thoughts on the college football playoff quarterfinals, the results, and what they lead to. It was Miami over Ohio State, 24-14. We'll just start there. Man, Miami looks scary. They look like they did the first few weeks of the season when everyone was asking, man, who's good in college football? And a lot of the answer was, I don't know, but Miami's looked pretty darn awesome, and they kind of returned to that form. That defense has never really wavered throughout the season. for Miami. I'll tell you, I thought they were awesome. Obviously, I mean, man, they had Julian Saint in hell. Quite honestly. He threw the 2 interceptions. He was sacked 5 times in that game. They were all over him. And Miami gives me kind of the feeling that we had about Ohio State last year when Ohio State was just blowing through the college football playoff. And it was just like, man, how in the world did this team get beat twice? And especially when you look at Miami's loss. I mean, they lost to Louisville and they lost to SMU. And it's just, how did that happen? They're so deep. They're so talented. Ruben Bain is an absolute menace. You love the young talent they have on offense as well. So, I mean, Miami looks absolutely incredible here as we head towards the semifinals. I mean, their defense has just been – they have allowed 17 points, y'all. 17 points so far in the college football playoff. They've been incredible. Oregon beating Texas Tech. I don't think that was much of a surprise. I think the way it happened and how dominant it was specifically on defense for Oregon. I mean, they forced, I believe it was four turnovers in that ball game. I'll double check that. Yeah, 4 turnovers in that ball game. That was a very well played defensive game in general. But whenever Oregon could keep Texas Tech's defensive front at bay, Dante Moore I thought was fantastic in the Orange Bowl on Thursday as well. Just a 4th down fest in there, and you saw some really great defensive football on those 4th downs, some really awesome stops on 4th and short in that ball game. But I mean, Oregon, they punched in a late touchdown. It was 16-0 with under 2 minutes left. They punched in a late score to give you the 23-0 margin. But Oregon looks pretty good, and I'll tell you what, the bounce back from their defense that you saw after struggling a little bit against James Madison, I'm curious to see if that'll hold up against Indiana. We'll wait and see. And then, I mean, hell, let's talk about Indiana as well. Indiana looks like the national champion right now. Like, look, it is one thing, and there were plenty of people in Indiana, rightfully so. They were a 7-point favorite. I think it closed at 7.5 over Alabama. Okay, like they were expected to win the game and do it by more than a touchdown per the odds makers. And I think you had a lot of people say, "Oh, Indiana, they're going to dominate and steamroll Alabama." And it is one thing to say that; it is another thing to watch it and watch how dominant Indiana was in that football game. Indiana is the best tackling team that I have seen all year. They don't miss. It is a relentless pass rush when they're missing one of their top havoc creators in the backfield. He leads the country in TFLs. They're missing him. He's out for the whole playoff now. And it just doesn't matter. They are constantly in the backfield. Then they just have an awesome, efficient quarterback in Fernando Mendoza who doesn't light you up from a yardage perspective, but 3 more touchdown passes for him, and they run for 200 yards. They physically abused Alabama for 60 minutes in that football game, and that's just something that we're not used to seeing an Indiana team do to anybody, let alone a team that has run the sport for a large majority of its existence, okay? Like, I understand that Alabama wasn't great this year. I get that. I understand that they're not what they were under Nick Saban. I get that. And it's not just an Alabama thing. Neither is Georgia. Georgia is not at all what they used to be under Kirby Smart. I think that is very, very obvious up to this point, where you look at 2 first-round exits for Georgia. But that's still a really good program. And Indiana took a program in Alabama and just completely dismantled them, embarrassed and humiliated them on national television for 60 minutes. And I loved it, by the way. But they look unstoppable. Like, I mean, they look like a complete buzzsaw. We'll see if anyone can get in their way. Oregon has the next test. And then Ole Miss and Georgia. And look, I'm going to tell you this right now. You can keep doubting Ole Miss. I'm not. I'm done doubting them. They are a lot better than anybody gave them credit for throughout this season. Georgia was more than a touchdown favorite in that game and expected to steamroll. And the thing you heard so much from a lot of people is Georgia, it would be close for half and Georgia would pull away in the second half. That could not have been the complete opposite. Ole Miss was more physical. They owned the trenches in that game. Trinidad Chambliss was awesome, as was Harrison Wallace the third. He was incredible too. But they beat Georgia at their own game. It was a complete role reversal. And that's twice now you've seen Georgia exit in their first game, 2 years in a row in the college football playoff, when no one gave Ole Miss a chance. And you know what? Not many people are going to give them a chance against Miami. I'm not telling you I think Ole Miss is going to win that game. I'm not telling you I think Ole Miss is going to win a national championship. I'm just telling you I'm done doubting them. You can keep doubting them if you want. I'm not. Because that team is playing with a chip on their shoulder the size of the Grand Canyon, and maybe even bigger than that. And that's a really big motivating factor. I think we're set for two really, really good semifinals. I really do. A rematch in Oregon and in Indiana, which was a really good game. A pick six is ultimately gave you a late touchdown is ultimately gave you that margin at the end there. The 10-point margin was a really tightly competitive game up there in Eugene earlier this year, so I'm excited to see that again. I think Ole Miss and Miami is going to be, to see Ole Miss's offense, which is just rolling right now with Charlie Weiss Jr. still calling plays, up against that Miami defense, which has just been a force to be reckoned with here all season, and especially in the college football playoff. I think those are two great games. The last thing I'll say is the teams with the byes, they're now 1-7. The trend continued this season. I still don't quite know what to make of it because I didn't really see any of the teams on bye look like they just weren't ready to play. But I think there's certainly something to be said for, after 2 years, having one victory out of 8 games, that maybe having the bye in the college football playoff is not the best thing. We'll continue to get a sample size of that. It might be in an even more expanded playoff, but we'll continue to get a sample size of that as this thing rolls on, as there'll be maybe even more, potentially more buys handed out the bigger this thing gets. But that there were some the game of the night might have been Ole Miss Georgia, but there were some pretty loud statements made in the quarterfinals. I think we actually learned a lot about where this thing's heading going forward, and I think the only sure thing right now is Indiana. I'm really intrigued to watch Miami and Ole Miss here next week. So we'll continue to preview, keep that coming for you here probably all throughout and leading up into those games. Right now, we'll grab a break. We'll come back, close out hour number 2. Another receiver making his way to campus for a visit for LSU out of the portal. That's next.
AFR.
We're brought to you by Goodwood Men's Sexual Wellness. Visit yourgoodwood.com, yourgoodwood.com. Yes, hormone replacement therapy. Yes, NAD+. Yes, BPC 157. Yes, ED treatment. The bottom line is, gentlemen, I don't care how old you are. It's about how old you feel, and do you want to feel like you did when you were younger? Do you want to live a more vital life? Do you want to live a more energetic life, where you wake up in the morning, your feet hit the floor, and you're rip-roaring ready to go, where you're motivated to get in the gym, where you have a great libido, where you have great mindset, energy, mental clarity, memory, all that sort of stuff? It's possible. It's affordable. Goodwood Men's Sexual Wellness can help you do it. Hormone replacement therapy could be a giant part of that for you. NAD Plus can literally help your cellular optimization to make you younger at a cellular level. BPC 157, tremendous in helping in recovery. Learn more. yourgoodwood.com.
After further review with Matt Moscona, presented by Don Juan Cigar Bar.
All right, closing out hour number 2 here of After Further Review. Terrell Anderson is a transfer wide receiver target out of NC State. Pete Nakos reporting that he is lining up a visit to LSU. One of 2 wide receivers. I'll tell you about the other one in the next hour. I don't have enough time right here. In fact, we'll do that to start hour number 2. Excuse me, hour number 3. Terrell Anderson, though, North Carolina State. He was a 4-star prospect out of high school, spent the last 2 seasons at NC State, So he has 2 years of eligibility remaining. He's a true sophomore. 6'3", around 210 pounds, somewhere in that range. He added about 23 pounds actually entering his sophomore season, and boy, it paid off. You look at Anderson, 39 receptions, an average of 16 yards per reception, 629 yards, led NC State, 5 touchdowns as well. 75 yards was his long on the season. So, I mean, look, this is a guy who was coveted and is coveted right now. Pete Nakos also in his report noting there are multiple top 25 programs that are in on Anderson, but LSU is getting a visit. It does appear, for what it's worth, also out of high school. He was the number 4 player in the state of North Carolina, so a local guy there as well. Look, it is one of LSU's biggest positions of need. We've talked about it already this hour. Right now, you have no Berrien Brown, no Chris Hilton, no Aaron Anderson, no Xavier Thomas. Kyle Parker has announced his intention to enter the transfer portal. Destin Hill has announced his intention to enter the transfer portal. So what you're looking at right now at wide receiver is Nick Anderson, who until he announces anything other, you expect him to return. Phillip Wright, Teron Francis, and then 3 freshmen you're bringing in, Jabari Mack, Corey Barber, Braden Allen. So certainly a guy like Terrell Anderson would be a massive, massive get for LSU out of the portal, as they need multiple wide receivers with experience to fill out that room. Terrell Anderson lining up a visit to LSU per Pete Nakos, a transfer from NC State. Okay, we'll grab a break. We'll come back. No Sports Center. Bowl games are on. So we'll just hit the top of the hour. We will update portal. We will update returners and talk about the other receiver who has his visit coming to LSU next week. That's next on AFR.
AFR.